Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is based on a powerful Hollywood movie story, explained in a simple and interesting way. This is not just a movie recap, it's a journey through emotions, struggle, and unforgettable moments. So relax, stay till the end, and enjoy this amazing story. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is 2017 movie review. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is a 2017 American action-adventure comedy film directed by Jake Kasdan and written by Chris McKenna, Eric Summers, Scott Rosenberg, and Jeff Pinkner. The film is the second in the Jumanji film series and a direct sequel to Jumanji, 1995. The film stars Dwayne Johnson, Jack Black, Kevin Hart, Karen Gillan, Nick Jonas, Rhys Darby, and Bobby Cannavale. The story focuses on a group of teenagers who come across Jumanji, now transformed into a video game roughly 2 decades after the original film's events. They find themselves trapped inside the game as a set of adult avatars, seeking to complete a treacherous quest alongside another player who has been trapped in it since recovering and playing it in 1996. The film contains notable references to the first film as a tribute to its lead actor, Robin Williams. 5 Principal photography began in Honolulu in September 2016 and ended in Atlanta in December. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle premiered at the Grand Rex in Paris on December 5, 2017, and was released in the United States on December 20 by Sony Pictures Releasing. The film received mostly positive reviews from critics, and grossed $962 million, becoming the 5th highest grossing film of 2017. A sequel, Jumanji, The Next Level, was released in 2019. In 1996, Brantford, New Hampshire, teenager Alex Vreek receives Jumanji, which was previously disposed of by Alan Parrish and Sarah Whittle in 1969 from his father, who found it on the coast. However, he sets it aside, being only interested in video games. Later that night, Alex finds it transformed into a video game cartridge. Opting to play, he is sucked inside the game, disappearing from the real world as time continues to pass, thus leaving the Vreek family's house in a disheveled state. 20 years later, 4 Brantford High School students, awkward Spencer Gilpin, athletic Anthony Fridge Johnson, narcissistic Bethany Walker, and cynical Martha Capley are given detention for their misbehavior, Fridge and Spencer for having been caught cheating on their assignments, Bethany for making a video call during a quiz, and Martha for insulting the gym teacher. Upon finding Alex's discarded video game system and starting it up, the group is sucked into Jumanji, landing in a jungle as their chosen avatars, Spencer as muscular archaeologist Dr. Xander Smolder Bravestone, Fridge as diminutive zoologist Franklin Mouse Finbar, Bethany as male, overweight cartographer and paleontologist Professor Sheldon Shelley Oberon, and Martha as sultry martial arts expert Ruby Roundhouse. 3 marks on their arms denote their lives in the game, making them afraid that if they lose all 3, they will actually die. The group's goal is to end a curse on Jumanji, brought about by a corrupt archaeologist and the game's primary antagonist, Professor Van Pelt B, after he stole a magical jewel called the Jaguar's Eye and gained control of the jungle's animals. They must return the jewel to the shrine and call out Jumanji to lift the curse and leave the game. Coping with their avatars, their weaknesses, Van Pelt's men, and their own group dynamics as they begin their journey, they encounter Alex playing the 5th avatar, pilot Jefferson Seaplane McDonough, who takes them to a treehouse that Alan built during his tenure in Jumanji. Alex thinks he has only been stuck in the game for a couple of months. Everyone, including him, is shocked to realize he has been there for 2 decades. The group coordinate with each other's strengths and work together to overcome the game's obstacles. They manage to return the jewel to the statue, break the curse and return to the real world. Back in the present, the group finds the Vreek home restored and lively, compared to its previous state after Alex's disappearance. They meet Alex, now an adult, who explains that he returned to 1996, allowing him to live his life. He remained in Brantford and now leads a married life with 2 children, a daughter called Bethany, named in honor of Bethany Walker, as she had saved him by sacrificing one of her own lives in the game, and a son named Andy. Spencer, Fridge, Bethany, and Martha form an unlikely friendship after their experiences in the game, having bonded and become better people, including Bethany becoming more of an outdoor person. Spencer and Fridge patch things up and Spencer and Martha beginning a relationship. Soon, after hearing drum beat sounds coming from the game, they destroy the game with a bowling ball to prevent it from endangering anyone else and they left. Plans for a Jumanji sequel were put forward by Sony Pictures Entertainment in the late 1990s. As reported by Ain't It Cool News, a standalone sequel entitled Jumanji 2 was in development in 1999. The plot of the story involved John Cooper, the President of the United States, buying Jumanji from an old antique store in Europe and bringing it to the White House to play it with his children, one of whom, Butch, just wants a dad, not a president for a father. Cooper then gets sucked into the world of Jumanji, paving the way for his evil vice president, who was supposed to be played by Steve Buscemi, to rise to power as Cooper's replacement. Inside the game, Cooper would have teamed up with hybrid animals, which were going to be animated with CGI. Sony Pictures Consumer Products Executive VP of Worldwide Consumer Products Peter Dang revealed prototype drawings of animals that might have appeared in the film, all designed by Ken Ralston, who served as visual effects supervisor in the original film and was planned to make his directorial debut with Jumanji 2, slated for a Christmas 2000 release date. The first film's co-writer, Jonathan Hensley, had written the initial draft. Ralston eventually stepped down and the project stalled, albeit the DVD commentary of the first film still references a sequel directed by Ralston. Several other directors and writers came and went on the project, including Steve Edekirk, Adam Ripken, David S. Ward, Don Reimer, and the original author Chris Van Allsburg. Then in 2002, a new iteration of the sequel was reported by Variety. Director Dennis Dugan had pitched his own version of the sequel that was said to have used the full potential of the board game and would have brought back Robin Williams, who Dugan believed would have more comedic opportunity. Peter Ackerman was being looked at to write. When they were unable to interest Williams in the sequel, Sony passed on the project and moved on to develop Zathura. In July 2012, rumors circulated that a remake of Jumanji was in development. Columbia Pictures president Doug Belgrad said, "We're going to try and reimagine Jumanji and update it for the present." It was confirmed on August 1 that Matthew Tolmach would produce the new version with William Dietler, who produced the original film. In August 2015, Sony Pictures Entertainment announced that the film was scheduled for release on December 25, 2016. Online reception to the news was negative, with some saying that the announcement came too soon after the death of Robin Williams in August 2014, who played Alan Parrish in the original film. The announcement was criticized by Bradley Pears, who played Peter Shepard in Jumanji, and by E! News, which called the remake unnecessary and kind of insulting. Scott Rosenberg was hired in October 2015 to rewrite the script for the film, whose production was a high priority for the studio. Jake Kasdan was hired to direct the film the following year in January from a script by Rosenberg and Jeff Pinkner based on a draft by original writers Chris McKenna and Eric Summers. The film's complete title, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, was confirmed in Cinemacon 2017 held in March. Its plot involved teenagers cleaning out a school's basement, who find a vintage video game version of Jumanji and are sucked into the first film's jungle setting. Although fans debated whether the film was a sequel or a reboot, the second trailer, released that September, indicated that the sequel is set 21 years after the first. Dwayne Johnson noted that the film was inspired by classic video games of the 1990s. The film had used the working title Jumanji and the final title, and the use of the song Welcome to the Jungle was suggested by Jack Black. Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart were in early talks in April 2016 to star in the film, although both actors had other projects at the time. Johnson confirmed his casting on Instagram later that month. In July, Nick Jonas joined the film's cast with Johnson, Hart, and Jack Black. Black and Hart were paid $5 and $10 million for their involvement, respectively. The following month, Johnson said that the film would not be a reboot but a continuation of the 1995 film. Karen Gillan was announced as part of the cast. On September 20, Sardarius Blaine was cast as Anthony Fridge Johnson and Madison Eisman as Bethany Walker. 2 days later, Rhys Darby was cast as Nigel Billingsley, Morgan Turner as Martha Capley, and Alex Wolff as Spencer Gilpin. In November, Bobby Cannavale announced his casting in the film, and in December, Tim Matheson joined the cast as Old Man Vreek. Principal photography began on September 19, 2016, in Honolulu, Hawaii, primarily at the Kualoa Ranch Nature Reserve. The film wrapped on December 8 in Atlanta, Georgia. James Newton Howard was originally signed to compose the film's score, but was replaced by Henry Jackman when the film's release date was postponed 6 months. The soundtrack was released digitally on December 15, 2017 by Sony Masterworks. The visual effects are provided by Elara and supervised by Glenn Millenhorst with help from Moving Picture Company, Olin VFX, and Rodeo FX. Sony initially gave the film a release date of December 25, 2016. Since filming did not begin until September 2016, the release was pushed back to July 28 and then to December 20, 2017. Amazon Prime members in the United States could access to tickets for a December 8 screening of the film at select Regal, National Amusements, ArcLight Cinemas, and AMC theaters. The screening sold out at 1,200 theaters and earned $1.9 million. The film was released on IMAX 2D on January 12, 2018. In India, the film was released in English, Tamil, Hindi and Telugu languages on December 20, while in China, the film was released on December 29. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle was released on digital HD on March 6, 2018, and on DVD, Blu-ray, Blu-ray 3D, excluding North America, and 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray on March 20, while still in theaters. The Blu-ray and digital versions include 2 additional featurettes, Surviving the Jungle, Spectacular Stunts, and Book to Board Game to Big Screen and Beyond. Celebrating the legacy of Jumanji. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle made a revenue of $65 million from home video sales with 3.4 million units sold, making it the 7th best-selling title of 2018. In April 2021, Sony signed a deal giving Disney access to their legacy content, including the Jumanji franchise, to stream on Disney Plus and Hulu and appear on Disney's linear television networks. Disney's access to Sony's titles would come following their availability on Netflix. The film would eventually be added to Disney Plus in select international regions along with the original 1995 film on February 1, 2026. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle grossed $404.5 million in the United States and Canada and $558 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $962.50 million. It was the 5th highest grossing film of 2017. On April 10, 2018, the film passed Spider-Man, $403.7 million, to become Sony's highest grossing film domestically. On December 25, 2021, Spider-Man: No Way Home surpassed the film at $405 million to become Sony's highest grossing film domestically. Deadline Hollywood calculated its net profit as $305.7 million when factoring all expenses and revenues, making it 2017's 4th most profitable release. In the US and Canada, the film was released on December 20, 2017, with The Greatest Showman and was projected to gross about $60 million from 3,765 theaters in its 6th-day opening weekend. The studio predicted a $45 million debut. It earned $7.2 million on its first day and $7.6 million on its second day. Over the 3-day weekend, the film grossed $36.2 million, for a 6-day total of $71.9 million, finishing second at the box office behind Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Its weekend-only earnings increased to $50.1 million during its second weekend, again finishing in second place at the box office. The 38.4% weekend-to-weekend increase was the fourth largest for a film playing in over 3,000 theaters. The Greatest Showman set the record for best hold the same weekend. The film passed Star Wars: The Last Jedi for the top spot the following weekend, declining 28.1% to $36 million, and finished first again the following week with $28.1 million, and a total of $35.2 million over the 4-day milk weekend. Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle remained atop the box office for its third weekend, earning $19.5 million. It again topped the box office for a fourth consecutive week, its sixth week overall in theaters, with $19.5 million, topping new releases 12 Strong and Den of Thieves. The film continued to do well the following week, dropping 16% to $16.1 million, and finishing second to Maze Runner: The Death Cure, before regaining the top spot for a fifth time the following weekend with $10.9 million. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 77% based on 235 reviews, and an average rating of 6.1/10. The website's critical consensus reads: Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle uses a charming cast and a humorous twist to offer an undemanding yet solidly entertaining update on its source material. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 58 out of 100, based on 44 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, while those at PostTrack gave it an 84% positive score. Dave White of The Wrap praised the cast and called the film a pleasant surprise. Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle is the Christmas tentpole release that aims to please and succeeds, a funny family entertainment product that subverts more expectations than it was obligated to contractually. Peter Traverse of Rolling Stone writes enough star power and comic zest to deliver a fun time at the movies, barely, and praises the cast, particularly Jack Black, as hilarious and for finding the vulnerable heart of the character. Traverse gives the film 2.5 stars out of 4. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian newspaper gives the film 3 out of 5 stars. Bradshaw praises Johnson for his endearing performance and calls it an amiable effort which can be expected to go down well on home viewings. David Ehrlich of IndieWire gave the film a C grade, calling it unnecessary, but mildly amusing. Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle is further proof that even the stalest whiff of brand recognition has become preferable to originality. Only part of the blame for that belongs to the studios, but after cannibalizing themselves for much of the last 20 years, Hollywood has clearly eaten their way down to the crumbs. For Variety, Owen Gleiberman wrote: Excitement, suspense, childlike innocence, ingeniously staged action set pieces. These are a few of the things you will not find anywhere in Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. It's supposed to be a board game come to life, but really, it's just a board game. A mobile game titled Jumanji: The Mobile Game, developed by Idiocracy Games and published by NHN Entertainment, was released for Android and iOS on December 14, 2017. The game was removed from Google Play and App Store on May 2, 2018, and its service ended on May 24, making the game unplayable. A virtual reality experience titled Jumanji: The VR Adventure, developed by MWM Immersive and published by Sony Pictures Virtual Reality, was released on Steam for HTC Vive on January 17, 2018. Although it was announced that the experience would be released on Oculus Rift and PlayStation VR, the releases were cancelled, as the game was panned by critics for its poor graphics and hardware performance. It was delisted from Steam on February 9, 2018. A video game titled Jumanji: The Video Game, developed by Funsolve and published by Outright Games, was released on November 8, 2019, for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Microsoft Windows. It is based on Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, and Jumanji, The Next Level. Dwayne Johnson, Jack Black, and Nick Jonas discussed the plot of the next Jumanji film, referred to as Jumanji 3, in interviews, including the possibility of the film exploring the origins of the game. According to Karen Gillan, the alternate ending of Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, would have left the door open for another installment. Kasdan returned to direct the sequel, with Rosenberg and Pinkner again writing the script and Johnson, Hart, Black, Gillan and Jonas reprising their roles. Filming began in January 2019. The film was released on December 13, 2019. Awkwafina, Danny DeVito, and Danny Glover joined the cast of the film. Black also confirmed the new film as being the fourth Jumanji film because of Zathura, A Space Adventure, 2005, serving as the second film and sharing continuity with the other films of the series, with Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle serving as the third film. When Spencer Gilpin is called into the principal's office, he has a pretty good idea why. It's because he helped a good friend. Okay, that sounds altruistic and big-hearted. The truth is, he screwed up. He wrote a paper, or two, or three, for a guy who used to be his good friend back when they were both skinny nobodies living down the street from each other. Since then, Anthony Fridge Johnson has grown into a football hero worthy of his nickname, and Spencer has, well, pretty much stayed the same stringy nobody that he always was. They rarely even speak anymore except when Fridge needs a bit of scholastic help. On this particular day, though, Spencer and his frowning former friend aren't the only ones heading into the detention soup. There's also a popular, pretty and completely narcissistic girl named Bethany awaiting the punishment axe. She was sent to the principal for putting selfies and in-class phone conversations above her teacher's more studious recommendations. And sitting next to her is a too smart for gym class gal named Martha. She's a bright individual who, by the way, Spencer has had a slight crush on for a while now. After getting a little tongue lashing, they're all sent to a small junk-clogged storage room to do a bit of heavy lifting and recycling as part of their collective penance. You need to come to grips with who you are and who you want to be, Principal Bentley says to the four of them. And, of course, cleaning up trash is the perfect way to facilitate that directive. Little do any of them realize, however, that the principal is being somewhat prophetic. Oh, yes he is. For amid the piles of stuff in that closet, Fridge finds what appears to be a very old-school video game console with a cartridge labeled Jumanji jammed into its game slot. Now, Spencer is a pretty well-versed video game guy. But he's never heard of this one. Still, he figures it'll likely beat ripping apart ancient magazines. So the kids plug the game into an old TV, flip the console on and choose their characters. With a rain of sparks, some bright flashing lights and the thunder-like rumble of, "Are those jungle drums?" all four teens are dematerialized and sucked into the little buzzing console. What's really incredible is the fact that they all find themselves in a deep, dank jungle. Spencer has somehow been transformed into a hulking, smoldering giant of a man, an archaeologist named Dr. Bravestone. Fridge. Well, he's now in the short and diminutive body of Moose Finbar, a zoologist and weapons expert. Martha has become a Lara Croft look-alike named Ruby Roundhouse. But oddest of all is that fact that the gorgeous Bethany is now a tubby cartographer named Sheldon Oberon. And before you can say, what just happened? Bethany/Sheldon gets grabbed by a passing hippo, slammed about and gobbled whole. Only to appear again, falling out of the sky, soon after that seeming demise. Yup, this Jumanji place is going to take some getting used to. The teens trapped and transformed inside this video game challenge gradually learn that they must work together, best a villainous bad guy and break a curse affecting the world of Jumanji. And along the way, these disparate adolescents, albeit clothed with decidedly adult avatars, become good friends. And they begin coming to grips with, well, who they are and who they want to be. Spencer, for example, realizes that his all-controlling fears and phobias are not always rational. Fridge learns some lessons about the value of friendship. Martha concludes that her formerly self-imposed shyness and isolation are quite limiting. And Bethany comes to grips with the fact that her social media selfie obsessions didn't really represent what she enjoys most in life. In fact, at one point Bethany states, "Ever since I lost my phone it feels like my other senses have been heightened." All the teens eventually understand that it takes more than muscles or beauty to make someone into an admirable person. It takes virtues such as trust, compassion, and self-sacrifice. The Jumanji game is imbued with unexplained magic. We first see it as a board game that's washed up on a beach, a nod to the original Jumanji film from 1996. But then the game magically transforms into a video game and pulls someone magically into its world. 20 years later it happens again with the story's heroes. The video game jungle world the teens play through is all magically controlled as well. In fact, their main quest is to break a curse that beset the land after someone stole a powerful ancient jewel. This jewel gives the thief magical control over the myriad beasts and crawling creatures of the land. We also see bugs and spiders crawling around on him. For instance, a millipede crawls up and into the man's ear. At another point, he opens his mouth, and a scorpion crawls out. In addition, each of our heroes is given 3 game lives. Life gauges, represented by tattoos on their arms, decrease in number each time they are killed or lose a life in the game. After each death they disappear, and an unharmed version of their avatar regenerates and drops from the sky. There's quite a bit of female skin on display when we meet Martha's new Lara Croft-like avatar. Even she feels uncomfortable with the exposure and chooses to cover up a bit at one point, wrapping a borrowed jacket around her waist. Of course, Spencer's muscular Dr. Bravestone avatar gets plenty of notice from the women in the group, too. That is a man right there, Bethany/Sheldon drools. But at least the brawny Bravestone keeps his shirt on. When it comes to Bethany and her male avatar, though, there are lots of jokes, quips, and visual gags tossed out concerning her gender-blurring body swap. The tubby male cartographer goes on and on about the new, male appendage that he/she isn't used to dealing with. That joke is revisited several times. And he/she also makes numerous gushing comments about the attractive males in their in-game party. When they meet another player named Alex, the guy gives an odd look to the short and stocky Sheldon after the character's obviously girl-like reactions. Fridge tells Sheldon that the person behind the avatar is actually a very attractive girl. "If you were out there alive, you'd probably hit that," he insists. Later, Bethany/Sheldon gives Alex a lingering mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And after hugging him, other characters make surprised verbal note of Sheldon/Bethany's clearly aroused, albeit off-camera, physiological response. As far as Bethany's real-world persona is concerned, we see her taking selfie shots that strategically expose skin. She states that her boyfriend likes it when she takes pics like that. "It's the key to our relationship," she says matter-of-factly. And when she reappears back in the real world, Bethany grabs her own breasts and sighs about how much she's missed them. Jokes are made about male genital size. Spencer and Martha kiss in both avatar and real-world form. Jumanji is staged as an action-adventure game, so there are many thumping, pummeling, shooting, and explosive scenes that unfold during our hero's jungle trek. A villainous explorer named Van Pelt sends scores of wild beasts after the teens in the game. We see several characters attacked by massive hippos, leaping and slashing jaguars, charging white rhinos and a thundering elephant. Some characters die in these attacks, though the violent deaths are always bloodless, and lives are subsequently regenerated. The heroes are also set upon by Van Pelt's motorcycle-riding thugs. These men shoot rifles and missile launchers. Some of them also fall from great heights. Fridge's character literally blows up at one point. Spencer and Martha spend several scenes flying into action and pounding various baddies. Martha's Ruby Roundhouse is quite adept at dance fighting as well as leaping into the air and kicking foes in the chest and head. Spencer's Dr. Bravestone, however, is much more straightforward. He uses duck and parry game moves to slam enemies into walls and literally launch them through the ceiling with massive uppercut shots. One man is killed via a scorpion sting to the neck. 3 or 4 S-words are spit out, as are a few F-word substitutes, such as frickin' dot. H and A, both show up more than a dozen times each. And we hear a few uses of D, N and B, CH. Jesus' name is misused once and God's name is misused some 15 times. One of Alex's in-game skills is the ability to mix great margaritas. Spencer and Martha try the blended concoctions, but spit them out. Fridge, however, gladly knocks down several glasses of the stuff, getting a little tipsy in the process. Spencer's mother reinforces his personal fears about the world around him. Remember, the world is a terrifying place, she tells him. There are a few urination jokes in the mix here, too. When you're trying to craft a fun movie house distraction for the family, it's probably smart to think beyond a typical film formula and come up with something rollicking, wondrous and imagination-filled. So it makes sense that this Pix movie makers decided to harken back to a fantasy romp from the 90s with a recognizable name and comedic pedigree. Just sprinkle in a handful of contemporary stars, stir in an updated plot twist, whisk briskly, and you've got a nice little matinee pudding with just the right amount of sugar and sprinkles, right? Well, sorta. I mean, there's broad, believe in yourself fun to be had here, but the problem is that while trying to craft something for your typical 13-year-old's enjoyment, the new Jumanji writing team dumbed things down, and sexed things up, a little too much. The nerd-to-video game hero body swap conceit at the core of things is cute. But it offers a limited pool of ideas and giggles. And the writers go back to that shallow jungle watering hole way too often. That's especially true with Jack Black's tubby guy who's really a pretty girl character. He/she continually sashays about with girlish vim and trades a selfie-taking obsession for an obsession with his/her anatomically male parts. Ew, indeed. Add in a lot more foul language than you might expect in a movie built for the kids, and you've got a fantasy actioner that's much less, fantastic than it could have been. So to be honest, right from the start this was a bit of a surprise. It has not been a good year for remakes in 2017, for example, The Mummy, see review, or The Ghost in the Shell, see review, all fell a bit flat on release. Add to this, it has been over 20 years since the first film, and all the information in the lead up to its release did not display Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle in a flattering light at all. Indeed, it felt like this was going to be another case of reheating an old franchise rather than trying to do something new, and we are getting a bit tired of this. However, none of this came to pass. Instead what we got was a fun romp through the jungle, with superb casting, and sense of knowing exactly what it wanted to do and succeeding in it. So to set the scene, it is 1996 and the Jumanji board game is dug up on a beach by a father on his morning run, and he decides to give it to his son. However, it is the 1990s and his son is not interested in board games because he has his PlayStation, #board games are fun so deal with it. So overnight Jumanji transforms itself into a video game and ensnares its next victim. Flash forward to today and lovable band of ragtag teenagers Spencer, Alex Wolff, Bethany, Madison Eisman, Fridge, Sardarius Blaine, and Martha, Morgan Turner, all find themselves in detention for different reasons. Forced to clean out a very old classroom they find the now old Jumanji game, and since anything is better than a stapling old magazine they plug it in and load it up only to find themselves sucked into the game as drum echo around. Now for me, I quite liked the original film, but as a child of the 1990s I probably enjoyed the animated series a bit more, so I was totally on board with the jump into the game, instead of the game coming into the real world. I also really liked that the writers took the time to show how the concept of Jumanji was updated in universe, which was a nice touch. For me, the film really takes off the moment they land in Jumanji and you get the combination of video game mechanics, and some of the best casting this year. For you see at the start of the film all the teenagers had very stereotypical issues, well combine those with the avatars that they picked and you get some comedy gold. So the nerdy boy with a fear of germs becomes Dr. Smolder Bravestone, Dwayne Johnson, who has muscles on muscles and can smolder on command. The football jock becomes Franklin Mouse Finbar, Kevin Hart, who has weaknesses in speed and strength, and only strength is that he is a weapons valet for everyone else. The shy, more academically inclined girl becomes Ruby Roundhouse, Karen Gillan, a dance fighter who is wearing an outfit probably not suited for a jungle environment. Finally, the cheerleader who spends her time stuck to her phone becomes Professor Sheldon Shelley Oberon, Jack Black, a man in his 40s. Now, I expected these combinations would wear out their welcomes really quickly with predictable jokes, but it just does not happen. This is because everyone is perfectly cast and is also willing to throw themselves into the roles. I think this might be my favorite performance from Dwayne Johnson so far because they let him show off his range, and he can do Insecure just as well as Class 1 Smolder. Also, I have to give props to Jack Black, because this is a role that very easily could have fallen into caricature or worse, but he walks that line by being really sincere. All of this means that just in general this film, more than any film I have seen in a while, is just fun, from start to end. It also allows you to get away with jokes I don't think you would have been able to do in any other setting. There was at least one joke where I heard a number of the younger members of the audience turn to ask why their parents were laughing, and it was quite amusing. The film also fills itself with these great supporting character moments, like Mark Evan Jackson appearing as the school principal or Rhys Darby popping up as Nigel the guide in Jumanji. It was also good to see Bobby Cannavale just swing for the fences in his role as the main villain Van Pelt. It really fit the tone of the film. I will say if there is part of the cast that didn't work as well, it would be Nick Jonas' character, but I feel that was more to do with him not getting enough screen time to define his character compared to the rest of the cast, than his acting. Another thing that is really interesting in the film is how it works as a video game movie, something that Hollywood has a real problem figuring out. For years the industry has tried to create a good adaptation of a video game, and nearly universally they are all terrible. Indeed, we saw them try it again this year with Assassin's Creed, see review. However, like Wreck-It Ralph, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle takes the route of using the iconography and mechanics of video games, without trying to adapt an existing story, and it works. If you are familiar with video game mechanics and tropes, you will get all the references before they get one of the characters to explain it to those who might not be familiar. Indeed, a good example comes right at the start when they were talking to Nigel, Rhys Darby, and I was listening in and then it clicked, wait, is he an NPC? Yep, he was. Each aspect that is introduced shows that the writers actually understand what video games are and how they work, rather than only understanding them as something those kids are into. Also, yes Sony, I know you have to vertical integrate, so I'll give you your Uncharted Easter egg, but The Last Guardian, come on, you can do better than that. On the production side of things, everything worked quite well. I liked how it seamlessly flowed from location shots, to sets, to visual effects. Indeed, they made really good use of the Hawaii countryside to give the world of Jumanji the kind of texture it needed. When it came to the visual effects, I liked the CGI creation of the animals, and in general, the animated visual effects have a style to them that works within the context of the film. I will say that there was at least one case of a CGI Karen Gillan that was quite noticeable and needed a little more work, but issues like these were only minor in the grand scheme of things. On the whole, I did like the musical score. It is triumphant when it needs to be, pulsating when it needs to be, dance fighty when it needs to be, but there was one trumpet cue they kept using and it did start to grate on me towards the end. In the end, do we recommend Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle? Of course, we do. It is just a fun movie from start to finish. It knows what it wants to be and it achieves that wonderfully. The jokes are funny, the cast is amazing, and the story is solid, One of the best family action adventure films I have seen in a long time. Is this what you're resulting yourself to, Sony? Are you guys just going to try to reboot all of your most popular and successful films in your catalog from the late 20th century? We had Ghostbusters last year, mediocre. Then we had Flatliners this past September, which I heard was god-awful. And now we have a Jumanji reboot, because why not? You can't pull the wool over my eyes, Sony. We know you're just doing these reboots to make money. The original Jumanji wasn't that much of a good movie, so you don't have much riding on this, but this movie is pretty good. In a brand new Jumanji adventure, 4 high school kids discover an old video game console and are drawn into the game's jungle setting, literally becoming the adult avatars they chose. What they discover is that you don't just play Jumanji, you must survive it. To beat the game and return to the real world, they'll have to go on the most dangerous adventure of their lives, discover what Alan Parrish left 20 years ago, and change the way they think about themselves, or they'll be stuck in the game forever, to be played by others without break. Because of Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle being a sequel, yup, this movie is every way a sequel, for it starts right after the first flick left off. People are going to walk into this with a certain bias due to 2 things, nostalgia and Robin Williams. I hate to break it to you this way, but the 1995 Jumanji wasn't a good movie, and this is coming from someone who watched both films within the same day. What Jumanji heavily lacked was a consistent tone. The original film was about this boy named Alex Parrish who got trapped in a board game for 26 years, and since nobody couldn't find him, the entire town went to shit because of it. So when Parrish, Williams, is awakened by 2 kids when they stumble upon the game, the story just becomes a depressing tale of a kid trapped in a man's body while having to finish the silly board game where everything comes to life and chaos ensues. It was tonally confused with what it wanted to be. On the one hand, it wanted to be this grim story of a kid in a man's body, similar to Big, who has to adapt to being an adult and trying to uncover the mysteries of his past. On the other hand, it wanted to be this adventure of having to finish this board game where everything comes to life before terribly computer-generated animals destroy their town. Seriously, even by 1995 standards, the CG for that film was god-awful. Aliens came out in 1986, and that had better visuals than the 1995 film. Jumanji wasn't made on the cheap, but yet it looked so cheap. It was not a good movie. Now, since I got that out of the way, I have to admit something that might as well offend you. Don't burn me to a stake when I say that this is one of those rare sequels that is far much better than its predecessor. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is a sequel that realizes all of its shortcomings of the original and decides to roll the dice with a story that thankfully doesn't take itself too seriously for a single minute. It follows a simple formula similar to The Breakfast Club, where we follow 4 high school students who are flawed characters stuck in detention, but instead of talking about their feelings, they stumble upon a Jumanji console. How did the board game turn into a console game? Well, one of the smartest things about this sequel is that we learn the board game has the power of transforming itself into other forms you're able to play. The game is like an evil spirit that always finds a way of coming back in forms you never think it'll take. Screw the Ouija board, the Jumanji board is something to stay clear from. Where the first film attempted to give a kid his wake-up call through this game but had a poor execution of doing it, this manages to provide us with 4 separate characters that all get thoroughly developed. The journey to all of their self-discovery is through this game that teaches these kids a lesson and helps them become better people. Unlike other Sony reboots/sequels that has come out of recent years, Ghostbusters primarily, Jumanji actually has a script that was thoroughly planned out and a lot of effort was put into. There are 4 credited screenwriters, but you can tell each of them tried to be delicate with the screenplay as much as possible because they didn't want another Pixels on their hands. There are so many elements that makes this movie work even as a standalone adventure. The majority of the movie sets place in the video game of Jumanji, and the film takes advantage of the video game concept with the humor. It has several meta moments where it satirically pokes fun at video game tropes such as AIs repeating the same words or how cutscenes are used as expositions. Besides the humor being the staple of the story, the fun of the adventure lies in the production where we are taken to the open world of Jumanji. As far as author Chris Van Allsburg film adaptations go, it plays similarly to Zathura, a space adventure where this board game about space literally took our central characters to space, so the audience got to explore space itself. Jumanji just had jungle animals come out of the game. Here we are taken to an actual jungle to play this game, and it has a lot of inspirations with its setting. The world that is built here has a cross mix of Uncharted and Tomb Raider, but with the 3 lives system like in NES game, cause nowadays there is no such thing as game overs in video games. Each different set piece in the movie is a different level where our leads have to work together to complete each challenge the game throws at them. It is a world that has a set of rules, and it abides by it all the way through. Not only does it delivers a more developed story that expands the world of the game, but it has a ton of callbacks to the first film that reminds you that they still love the predecessor. Whenever characters encounter Jumanji or after solving of the game's puzzles, bongo drums are played overhead. The film has a bit of a slow start, but once these high school kids are in their A-list star avatar, the movie is a total blast from start to finish. You have these characters in these bodies as these comedic actors, but you know what makes it enjoyable? They maintain their high school personalities. For example, Alex Wolff plays Spencer, who is this neurotic nerd, but when he gets sucked into Jumanji along with the other group of misfits, his Dwayne Johnson avatar embodies all the same characteristics as Spencer. That is the film's biggest strength. All of the comedic actors never lose sight of the characters they're portraying, for you see these kids stuck in these A-list avatar bodies. So when I look at Jack Black, who plays the avatar of Bethany, who is a blonde phone addict, all I see is the avatar of Bethany. For what it's worth, this is an amazing ensemble who brilliantly play off each other regarding comedy. We've seen Dwayne Johnson as vulnerable characters before, but we've never seen him shy and timid, and he's amazing at portraying that even with his muscular stature. With every role he takes on, he keeps proving time and time again that he is a great comedic actor. Kevin Hart is also fun to watch, especially since he's playing the short angry black guy who isn't doing the entire screaming thing. This is Kevin Hart if he was a jock but don't have the height to prove it. It is the second time Johnson and Hart have worked together in a film, and they are indeed becoming the dynamic duo. In Central Intelligence, Johnson was the socially awkward wild card while Hart was the straight man. Here Johnson is playing a neurotic and Hart is playing the aggressive guy, and they still work great together. At this point, I'm as convinced that you can give them any personality and they can deliver it while maintaining fantastic chemistry. Then you have Karen Gillan, who finally gets to show off her comedic chops on the big screen. When she plays as Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy, you never get to see her crack a joke nor much of a smile because her character isn't like that at all. But if you look at Gillian's work, you see that this woman has a knack for comedy, and she does it amazingly here. It's funny cause she doesn't seem so far off from her human counterpart, but when she has her moments to shine, she never fails. But if I'm going to be honest, my favorite has to be Jack Black as Bethany. Recently Black has been in very open roles that transformed him in a manner of range, and this is one of those. Because he has to embody the mannerisms of a teenage girl, from the walk, the speech, and the pitched voice, and he does it so goddamn well. Black captures being a teenage girl so well that there are some points I mistake him for Nathan Lane. I am not kidding, Black gives a performance that Nathan Lane would have played if only he would have subtly. You can see that a role like this was sort of a challenge for Black, but he executes it so flawlessly that every minute he's on screen, he managed to get a huge belly laugh out of me. As much as fun the movie is, the only downside is Bobby Cannavale as this generic villain in the video game. He's introduced as a cutscene, but as the film goes on, he isn't much as a signifying threat by any means. It is the intention because he is a video game villain with no character, but honestly, he doesn't do much besides telepathically control animals to do his bidding. It's confusing because the movie at first satirically pokes fun at the cutscene expositing his character, but yet we would often cut to Cannavale on our team's trail. At least in the first film, the guy who was hunting Parrish was silly and having fun, but Cannibal is taking this way too seriously for something that only has a comedic tone. You know how Jumanji was a family film? Well, this isn't. Welcome to the Jungle is for an entirely different demographic. This is a teen comedy that features coarse language and doesn't aim for subtle innuendos. There's a lot of crude humor including dick jokes, but it's a PG-13 film, so you know what you're walking into. So don't be that dumb-ass parent bringing their 8-year-old kid into Jumanji then having to explain to him/her what a boner means. Take them to see Ferdinand or Coco because this is not a kiddie flick. There's always that one blockbuster film that comes out during the holidays. Some might think it's Star Wars, but you'd be wrong. No, this year's epic movie is none other than Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Breaking the record for the most money earned in 2017, this film packs a Dwayne Johnson punch in this brand new blockbuster. Jumanji follows a group of young teens, who while forced to clean out the school basement, find a video game called Jumanji. Much like the 1995 Jumanji, this new game transports its players to a mystical place where they must fight to get back home. The similarities between the original Jumanji and this new installment are few and far between. Personally, I was never really a fan of the original one, mostly due to the fact that it was just a little too odd for me. And as I watched this reboot of the mystical series, I surprisingly enjoyed the story that unfolded before me. The cast, famously made up of Johnson, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, and Karen Gillan, definitely brings their talents to this movie. It's always a pleasure to watch both Johnson and Hart sarcastically make jabs at one another's faults. However, it's Black that really made many of these scenes funny. As the young teens cross the portal into Jumanji, each one of them is turned into a different video game character. Each one of them is matched to their gender, not necessarily their realistic physique, except for Black's character. Black, who goes throughout this movie as a young teenage girl, adds to the amount of laughter. One part that I can think of where Black's character offers to teach Gillan's character how to be flirtatious with guys. The scene ends as expected, but not before adding a few laughs. The movie, though humorous throughout, is not without faults. The middle of the film, where Johnson and his crew take over, is the meat and potatoes of the story, and rightly so. But it is so much so, the bookends of the story are lackluster and boring. The beginning and the end puts too much stock into a young high school melodrama, thus overall adding to the major hiccup of the film. But even with the flaws in the story, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle gives the audience a much-deserved comedy with a fun adventure. If you're looking for a mindless comedy to take you out of 2017, look no further than this movie. Nobody likes a know-it-all or a smart-ass. That is, unless you yourself are one. But some of the most intriguing people I've ever met, in the classroom, the workplace, at a bar, or a short spat with a personable stranger, have been those who carry their know-how with very little extravagance or can-do effort. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle does the same, only audibly louder, guarding its quiet presence and studied knowledge with a disciplined sense of world-building inside and out. And as a Ripley's Believe It or Not moviegoing exhibit, everything somehow gels in a firecracker of a film that's far better than it ever deserved to be. As winter ushers its way into the calendar's end, this film provides a healthy dose of a whimsically warm flu shot necessary to fight off the cold box office months to come. More fun movies have been few and far between in 2017. By its title alone, you might assume Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is bad fanfiction summoned to life by a nostalgic senior discount holder stuck in the middle with youth. But this film is a sequel, both spiritually and literally, building off of the critically poorly received and ahead of its time picture Jumanji. The two couldn't be any more different. While the visual effects from 1995 are hilariously dated, the movie grounds itself in practicality. And because the story brings the CGI wild, from monkeys to elephants to spiders to crocs, into a recognizable realm, they become more terrifying not because they look real, but because great performers like Robin Williams and Bonnie Hunt convince us that they are real. When Williams-aged Alan Parrish finally exits the game, we see the trauma through his eyes and rabid reactions. It's basically a PTSD drama like Full Metal Jacket meets the adventurous streak of Swiss Family Robinson, and Jumanji made kids wet the bed because it allowed imaginations to run like a stampede. More often than not, the less we see the better. Here's where the two films vastly differ, and if I'm being honest, where I thought the latest would be an abysmal failure. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle butters its toast with old cliches and gulps its plot down like a glass of Sunny D, chaperoning its For Breakfast Club high school students to the depths of detention hell. Spencer, Alex Wolff, lathers up in Purell as if it's cologne and carries his AP pen everywhere. The jock Fridge, Serdarius Blaine, needs to pass class and asks Spence, his friend before puberty struck, to write his papers. Their ruse is as successful as the Wile E. Coyote. Bethany, Madison Eisman, is going through a breakup and is a cell phone obsessed, self-absorbed brat, so much so that I'd believe it if she didn't know her precious handheld had an outward-facing camera. She's incarcerated for being selfish. Then there's Martha, Morgan Turner. Eyes set on Princeton and a rain cloud hovering over her secluded self-superiority, Martha refuses to participate in gym and insults the teacher. A reprimand comes quickly. All four end up in detention. All four play an old video game together. And all four must become friends. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle packs the subtlety of a mother forcing her child to go invite the kid hanging in the corner to play, but also has all of the maternal grace. This film sure forces feelings, but most importantly, we feel them. Too many movies like this one, whether they're from recycled properties of the past or dopey-eyed reinvent ions, prioritize plot points over character development. From a writing perspective, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is quite a successful endeavor. In the game, Spencer becomes the hulking and unresistible Dr. Smolder Bravestone, Dwayne Johnson. Fridge is shrunken down to expert zoologist mouses, Kevin Hart, size. The tepid Martha inhabits the badass Ruby Roundhouse, Karen Gillan. And in quite possibly my favorite gender-bending body swap moment since Your Name, Bethany becomes the curvy male cartographer Shelley Oberon, Jack Black. Granted, once inside the game, there's a villain, Bobby Cannavale, as forgettable as the Mario Brothers nemesis Bowser. Life-saving revelations appear out of thin air. And the very last shot feels more like a tacked-on earmark than a worthwhile ending. Despite those grievances, and a few too many admittedly funny penis jokes, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is as superficially cool and emotionally warm as its PG-13 rating allows. Johnson and his trademark eyebrows soar as a game avatar, and I'd argue that it's the role best suited for his brand. He's larger than life, in terms of physicality and personality, and playing a leader of men suits his gargantuan charisma. On the other hand, Kevin Hart's creative wheels normally run like a hamster on a wheel. Here though, he's just a funny piece in the puzzle, and for once his manner is reasonably tamed. Karen Gillan nails her role as an Ally Sheedy type embodied by a literal knockout. Even Nick Jonas, great in last year's GOAT, revives a dead character with depth. But the real star of this bombastic sideshow is Jack Black. He's a grown man, playing an imaginary man inhabited by a teenage girl, and the controlled, broken nuances he adds into his voice and the prissy way he carries himself makes me think he could star in a Mrs. Doubtfire remake. I don't want that to happen, but I can picture it. Director Jake Kasdan fine-tunes a smart script that fills every possible plot hole with hilariously obvious observations that are poured as thick as cement, and he embraces the ridiculous nature of the film itself, squeaking a message movie into a big action blockbuster. That message is one of change and kindness and selflessness, and this treasure trove of a film is one of the few items in the toy aisle to be enjoyed by grown UPS and young adults alike. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle prods and chases its audience, and I'd be lying if I wasn't wearing a grin when it practically reaches out to say, "You're it." Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is a sequel to the 1995 family classic that followed two siblings who find a board game that puts them in a number of terrifying situations. This film is directed by Kasdan and follows a group of high school students who find a video game called Jumanji. Upon playing the game, they are transported into the world of Jumanji as their avatars played by Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, Karen Gillan, and Jack Black. I honestly did not know how this movie would fare when putting it up against the original, and the truth is I had a ton of fun with Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. It doesn't try to be like its predecessor. Yes, it has the same name and the same base concept of a game that inhabits a ton of dangers, but it is very well updated for a modern audience. The switch from a board game to a video game gives the story much more freedom to create something new, and it makes full use of that freedom. The humor is surprisingly great, and some of it plays off the idea of being in a game where the large chunk of it is derived from the body swap element of the film, which I enjoyed. Overall, this was a definitively entertaining movie. The plot itself isn't very demanding in that it isn't going to make you think very hard, and it just guides you through this journey. So the film starts off by introducing us to the students who find Jumanji and enter its world: Spencer, Bethany, Fridge, and Martha, played by Alex Wolff, Madison Eisman, Sardarius Blaine, and Morgan Turner respectively. To be honest, I didn't really enjoy this opening 10 minutes with these versions of the characters all that much. It may have had something to do with the fact that the marketing gets you hyped for the in-game versions of the characters, but I wasn't vibing with any of them initially. Then the main plot kicks in and we are thrown into the jungle with Dwayne Johnson playing Spencer, Jack Black as Bethany, Kevin Hart as Fridge, and Karen Gillan as Martha, and the real fun begins. The pacing stumbles maybe once or twice throughout the film, but from the point of entering the game onwards I enjoyed almost every moment. The chemistry between all of the characters is great, and there are certain relationships in here which I completely bought into and was wholly invested in. They each shine when they're on their own and interacting with each other, and it all leads to a whole bunch of laughs. What is very well executed when considering the handling of the characters is that you can always tell who each character is despite being in a different body. One issue with the body swap plot point is typically that the two different actors don't feel like they're playing the same character. For instance, when watching Dwayne Johnson, I can see through the subtleties of his performance that it is Spencer in the body of Dwayne. So what I'm getting at is that the personalities from the real character to the in-game versions of them are consistent throughout. Now, I mentioned that the opening 10 minutes with the characters out of the game didn't grab me initially. But I feel like if I was to watch this movie again, I guarantee I would enjoy this opening sequence a lot more because of how attached I grew to the in-game versions of the characters on first viewing. They do each have a lot of comedic moments, but they all also have a meaningful arc that makes each character incredibly likable in their own individual way. Also, one way you can tell characters are all written very well is if upon leaving the film you can remember all of their names off the top of your head. And upon listing them off above, I remembered each of their names without issue, which I really like. The comedy in here is surprisingly handled exceptionally well, a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I laughed a lot more than I had anticipated. There are the occasional misses and lines that don't work as intended, but I'd say 80% of the humor in here worked, and there are quite a few big laugh out loud moments shared between all of the main cast. The only joke that ran on for a bit too long was regarding one of the characters asking about her phone, but other than that I had a great time laughing. Visually there isn't really anything to complain about because it looks pretty damn good. There is one moment where the CGI wasn't a little more noticeable, but it didn't really bother me. One thing you just need to remember is that this is a video game, so stuff plays out differently to how they would in the real world, and that helps to get through this movie without nitpicking certain details that may seem a bit off. So in the end, thankfully this is a damn enjoyable movie with a lot of hilarious comedy, well-written characters, and a simple plot that is engaging enough to where it is never boring. The movie is 2 hours long, and that's a perfect length for me. You could argue for it to be an hour and 50 minutes, but I feel it works at the length it's at. Even though this isn't based on a real video game, I guess you could still refer to it as a video game movie because of how integral a video game is to the plot. So if that's the case, you could say this is a very damn good video game movie, and you wouldn't be wrong. I'd say definitely check out Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, as it's a great family adventure comedy that offers a lot to enjoy. When first announced, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle was a movie nobody wanted. Like the reboot of the all-female Ghostbusters, Paul Feig, 2016, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle garnered equal hatred from both fans and critics alike. Whether it was due to the late Robin Williams passing in 2014 or the robust childhood nostalgia sparked by the original film, Jumanji, Joe Johnston, 1995, was one of those films that was better left untouched and persevered by the fond memories of the past. Releasing on December 20, 2017, 22 years after the original film, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle ranked number 1 at the box office for 3 straight weeks. After its second week on the market, the film had overtaken Star Wars: The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson, 2017, and has earned a domestic total of approximately $400 million on a $90 million budget. The film has also earned favorable reviews from critics and fans, currently holding a 76% critic score and an 89% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is not only a surprising economic success, but it is simply a great, modernized, self-aware, progressive film that surpasses the original in every way. Directed by Jake Kasdan, Walk Hard, The Dewey Cox Story, 2007, Bad Teacher, 2011, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle takes place several years after the original 1995 film that was based on the children's book of the same name written by Chris Van Allsburg. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle features 4 high school teenagers, Fridge, Spencer, Bethany, and Martha, as they are sucked into the video game world of Jumanji. The only way to escape the video game world is by completing the levels of Jumanji and finishing the game by working together. The film stars Kevin Hart, Dwayne Johnson, Jack Black, and Karen Gillian as the video game avatars of each of the 4 kids played by Sardarius Blaine, Alex Wolff, Madison Eisman, and Morgan Turner. The greatest appeal of Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is its modernization. The original film revolved around the conflict of a board game come to life. Monsters, creatures, and animals run amok throughout the town of Brantford, New Hampshire, as each of the players of Jumanji complete different challenges to finish the game. In Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, this plot is revamped when the original board game turns into a video game console. Instead of the game coming to life in the town we are already familiar with, the characters are sucked into a tropical, nuanced video game world similar to games like Far Cry 3 or Uncharted. This plot and setting change allows Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle to instantly resonate with today's audiences, knowing that popular gaming culture involves video games rather than board games. By updating Jumanji for contemporary audiences, the film not only separates itself from the original, but allows a world of new ideas and originality to come flourishing out of its video game setting. As this modernized plot device could come off as cheap and unoriginal, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle uses this modernization as a tool to provide nuance and well-written humor. Shot on location in Hawaii, the world of Jumanji is absolutely gorgeous, luscious, and fun, while being dark and mysterious. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle mirrors the feeling you get when starting up a brand new video game. You feel overwhelmed, excited, adventurous, and you want to explore every inch of the world you have been transported to. Video gamers will feel right at home when watching Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, as most of the film's humor is based around video games. From non-playable characters, NPCs, saying the same line of scripted dialogue over and over again, to characters dropping out of the sky to start another life, respawn, after dying, there's a lot here to love and laugh at. These gaming-based jokes are even enjoyable for non-gamers as they are presented in a way that is not exclusive, but situationally and verbally funny. For example, when the NPC Nigel, Rhys Darby, is first introduced, he is asked multiple questions by the main characters. In this scene, instead of saying different lines of dialogue when asked different questions, he repeats the same scripted lines. Rather than this joke being exclusively presented to the gaming audience, a joke that has resonated in gaming culture for years, the joke is presented in a way that is generally ridiculous and situationally funny due to the cluelessness and reactions of the main characters, allowing all audience members to share in the laughs. The most important part of Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle's humor is the way that it empowers the female characters through its self-awareness and desexualization. In video game culture, females are often visually presented in a way that is highly illogically sexualized in comparison to male characters. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle combats this issue when Martha's video game avatar is depicted in a short skirt and a crop top. Instead of sexualizing Martha for cheap visual thrills, Martha verbally asks why she is wearing a short skirt in the jungle, bringing attention to the absurdity of female depiction in video games. Furthermore, rather than just bringing attention to the sexualization, Martha covers herself up with a jacket, allowing her to take control of her own sexuality. This control by Martha highlights the insecurity and relatability of her character, rather than just using her as a tool for the male gaze. By far one of the best and well-written scenes of the film is when Martha must seduce some guards so the crew can make an escape. In this scene, Bethany, being played by a middle-aged, big-bodied Jack Black, must teach Martha the ways of seduction. Even though the scene is absolutely hilarious, Martha and Bethany's empowerment does not come from their bodies, but rather their confidence in themselves and their female-to-female bond. This allows the characters to gain incredible depth and agency rather than resort to cliché. Of the biggest critiques of the original Jumanji is that it focused too much on the spectacle rather than the depth of its characters, thus providing an empty and emotionally lacking film. However, unlike the original film, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle focuses solely on its characters and their relationship with each other. In Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, each teenage character is deep, relatable, and well-written, rivaling characters found in films like The Breakfast Club, John Hughes, 1985. Each character is unique and really complements the group by showcasing different insecurities and interpersonal relationships that mesh well with each other. For example, Martha represents the insecure nerdy girl whose agency is shaped by Bethany's confidence, Spencer's bravery, and Fridge's charisma. Like Martha, each character is able to gain awareness and become their true selves through interaction and growth with one another. This growth is truly able to shine because the chemistry of the teen cast is incredibly authentic, unforced, and dynamic. This is also carried over to the video game avatars, as each cast member accurately resembles their teenage counterpart rather than being someone else completely. This chemistry allows the characters in Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle to provide extraordinary emotional depth to the film rather than just becoming a cliched, tiring teen movie. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle not only delivers a unique and original sequel but surpasses the original film in almost every way. Whether it's through its unique protagonists, luscious world, or well-written humor, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle is a shockingly deep and original teenage film that should not be missed. First things first, Jack Black, Dwayne Johnson, Karen Gillan, and Kevin Hart, in that order, are the whole set of reasons to see Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. If none of those names stir any kind of pleasure in your heart, or worse still, if those names raise your hackles, it's probably safest to ignore every single word of the following review. Because while I try to be a good and objective film critic, it's quickly getting to the point where Dwayne Johnson appearing in a light-hearted comedy adventure is good for a 3-star review from me, even if the film has literally the worst screenplay ever filmed. Welcome to the Jungle does not, at least, have that. In fact, of the 2 Jumanji films that have been made, it is easily the best in pretty much every possible way. The 1995 Robin Williams vehicle that this film addresses in the most glancing, invisible ways it can while still functioning as a sequel is, as I recall, one of the more annoying, clamorous films Williams made during the 1990s, and that is an especially annoying, clamorous population of movies. I will concede that its bad CGI is better by 1995 standards than Welcome to the Jungle's bad CGI is by 2017 standards, and that is the last I will bother comparing the two. The new film uses the title to get its foot in the door, and employs a heavily modified version of the same conceptual hook, but otherwise it's absolutely doing its own thing. That own thing starts with a prologue in 1996, when a teenage boy, Mason Guccione, finds the magic board game Jumanji, and when he elects not to play it, it transmogrifies into a video game. One flash of green light later, and he goes missing, attaining the status of urban legend over the next 20 years. It's a solid opening for a 22 years later sequel. If you've seen the original, it has a distinct "it's happening again" vibe, and if you haven't, it's just a peculiar mystery to be explored over the next 2 hours. Skipping ahead to 2016, we meet 4 high school students, all of them about to end up in detention together: nerd Spencer, Alex Wolff, who has helped his one-time friend, school athlete Fridge, Sardarius Blaine, cheat on a paper; sullen, quiet, athletics-averse Martha, Morgan Turner, who mouths off to the gym teacher in a rare moment of open self-expression; and vapid Bethany, Madison Eisman, who got involved in a phone call during a quiz. Every last one of them is the purest cliché imaginable, please note, and there's really nothing in these opening scenes to obviate how much that's the case. It's only when they're dumped into an old storage room and find that same video game console, now gathering dust, that the film picks up much energy at all, because it's at that point that the teens, looking to delay the work their principal had assigned them, decide to boot up the old game. And they're immediately sucked into the world of Jumanji, a video game set in Jungle Valley where each of them inhabits the body of a caricatured avatar, with maxed out irony in the pairings. Spencer becomes the hyper-muscled archaeologist Dr. Smolder Bravestone Johnson, Fridge becomes the tiny weakling Franklin Mouse Finbar Hart, Martha becomes the martial arts sexbot Ruby Roundhouse Gillen, and Bethany becomes the overweight cartographer Professor Sheldon Shelley Oberon Black. Thus ensues 3 closely related films. The worst one, by far, is the straightforward jungle adventure, in which the 4 unwilling players are compelled to fight against the wicked Van Pelt, Bobby Cannavale, for control of a magic gemstone that controls the future of Jumanji. Jake Kasdan is a comedy director of some admirable gifts. His Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, is one of the few 21st century American comedies I love unreservedly, but incorporating action sequences turns out not to be one of them. And the largely obvious CGI, there's a good-looking hippo, some okay-looking rhinos, a poor-looking snake, and some utterly hideous jaguars, doesn't help matters on that front at all. Frankly, it feels like the action bits and pieces were included for no reason other than that they had to be, out of some obligation to a marketing sector. Certainly, the sequence at the end where it all turns into a pro forma chain of set pieces is easily the weakest stretch of the whole movie, including the trite framework with the teens. The other 2 movies are both comedies. One is a blithe parody of video game logic, with the 4 characters able to create pop-ups of their strengths and weaknesses. Dr. Bravestone's weaknesses: none. Mouse's weaknesses: cake, and non-player characters rattling off a tiny number of lines in an endless loop, one of them played by the always welcome Rhys Darby. It's charming, if easy. The other is the equally easy spectacle of watching Johnson, Hart, Black, and Gillen playing teenagers trapped in weird bodies, so, teenagers, and this does in fact turn out to be virtually the only source of humor, conflict, drama, or plot momentum that the film ever attempts to mine. The limitations of Welcome to the Jungle are thus obvious, and the only thing I can really say on its behalf is that it's probably the best case scenario for a concept that was never going to be capable of being more than an appealing family comedy, and one that, as a family comedy, should maybe have aimed more for the PG rating than the PG-13. There are a couple of dick jokes that feel at odds with the rest of the film. Which brings me back to the 4 leads who give, as God is my witness, the best quartet of comedy performances I've seen in anything this year. There's a lot of stereotype flying around here. Of course, Jack Black plays a shallow mean girl isn't a prompt that's going to reveal any shocking layers of human psychology. But there is, if you'll allow me the distinction, a difference between Black foregrounding himself as a comic player, and Black playing Bethany's frustration and confusion and the character growth that arises from that. And it's actually the latter thing that happens both in his and Gillen's performances. Hart comes the closest to just playing his usual persona, and Johnson is playing a variation on the big guileless kid role that he has played in the past. In fact, there's a lot in their work in this film that very closely mimics their last on-screen pairing, Central Intelligence from 2016 *, but even they're still mostly working from the characters, not just winking and serving up jokes. And that's ultimately what sells Welcome to the Jungle. It is, for all it has an astronomically high concept, a character-driven comedy, and the four leads commit to those characters and their small-scale teenage crises without any detectable trace of self-consciousness or looking down on the material. It's nice, sweet, and funny, achieving virtually everything it appears to care about. I don't think it cared about working as an action picture, and in the process is the most uniformly satisfying popcorn movie I've seen in the last third of 2017. This film, directed by Jake Kasdan, screenplay by Chris McKenna, story by Chris McKenna, based on Jumanji, produced by Dwayne Johnson, starring Dwayne Johnson, cinematography Giola Pados, edited by Mark Helfrich, music by Henry Jackman, production companies Columbia Pictures, distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. Release dates December 5, 2017. Running time 119 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $90 million. Box office $962.5 million. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing movie stories. Thank you for watching.